about Bosch, they just came out with their numbers. So let me welcome on board Soumitra Bhattacharya, the MD at Bosch Limited and President Bosch Group in India, joining in on the show right now. Soumitra, great to have you on the show. Soumitra, just looking at all the parameters and all the moving parts, and there's so many of those impacting your business right now. You've stated that in FY23, you expect the revenue to surpass the peak numbers of FY18 to 19. I'm wondering, what gives you this kind of confidence to grow at a pace of over 15% despite supply side issues?
Thank you very much for having me on your show, and I think it's a great question. Let me start with, for example, quarter one results. As you can see, the quarter one results, I'm not comparing with the quarter of the previous year because that was a COVID year. Even when I look at sequentially, we have, had a plus 7%, and our turnover at 3,545 crores gives you an indication of this. Our previous best was about 12,000 crores. So we clearly feel that this would be surpassed. And we also feel, based on the previous year fiscal year, we are still looking at the number on growth that you mentioned, the plus 50. What are the basic parameters? First, on the pros, I would say India is relatively on a sweeter spot. I expect pass cars, for example, to cross the 4 million mark, which was a peak, and head perhaps towards 4.2 million. In case of light commercial vehicles, the peak was about 670, and I expect that also to be touched this year, perhaps even slightly edge forward. Tractors has been brilliant so far, and we expect, and of course the peak was crossed already 1.5 years ago, and we expect the good run to continue. Very important is our monsoon being even for this year. If I look at two-wheelers, while we will have an improvement over the previous year from 17.5, and we estimate about 19.5 million, the peak of 25 will not be touched. Heavy commercials is a different story. We are moving up on a very low base, and we should touch anywhere between 360 to 370,000, but far away from the 480. So in summary, I would say the government and the RBI governor is doing a very good job on maintaining and containing inflation. Now, inflation is the key. Inflation currently in India relatively is in a far better shape than the rest of the world. Look at Europe, look at America, look at other parts of the world. And in many parts, inflation can run away even towards a recession. So subject to that not happening, where we see a ease of the semiconductor happening, where we've seen for the four-wheelers, semiconductors, the gap is not 100% filled. But if you look at the fill rate of 75-80%, we are in a far better shape for the industry.
Right. Soumitra, I must say you increased my vocab. We always used to call it passenger vehicles or PVs. You mentioned pass cars, did you? Okay.
Thank you. It's always good, yeah.
Anyway, there could be one niggling worry and irritant perhaps, but I don't know. In the near term, the tensions building up between China and Taiwan, and we've been seeing that with Nancy Pelosi's visit. Could that be a worry for you?
I think you hit the nail on the head, If I may add to what you mentioned, let's look at the basket in a very complex and volatile and fragile world around us. 24th February changed the face of the world completely when, the Russia-Ukraine war started. And it's still continuing. Implications of this is huge, not just for Europe, but for the rest of the world. Oil prices, for which India is greatly dependent, and especially the Brent, is of a major, major issue and concern. If you then look what you rightly said about China and US relations, and that linked then to Taiwan, which is a hotspot, has further implications for the world, but also for India. Now, I would say in this very fragile world, which has changed, where the only certainty is uncertainty, and where today inflation is becoming higher, and don't forget, in the winter months, the gas supplies to Europe and to different countries can also play a major role. We see too many balls in the air. Relative to that, I would say India is in a sweeter spot. It's all relative. And this is where India, as industry and the government, must work together closely for us to fulfill the promise, not just for the domestic market in a competitive manner, but also for the mid and long run on the export market.
The concern with markets had or still have is what would be the relevance of a great engineering company like Bosch in the EV market?
Good point. Very good point. You can see I'm wearing something called the Spark Dot Next here. On 30th of June, we inaugurated our Smart Campus. It was virtually inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister for a private sector MNC, where he talked about Bosch being not only a great engineering company, but also with Indian energy. Now, our parent, Robert Bosch, with whom we work very closely, has the whole array of EV products, components, and solutions. Bosch GmbH has been working on EV for the last 12 years, spending more than 500 million euros every year. The acquisition books for our parent is also huge. So I would say, based on the backing of our parent and based on our very high level of focus on R&D also in India, and we are not going to make announcements now because the EV market is very nascent. We are in the four-wheeler market. We are in the two-wheeler market. We are going to work very closely with OEMs, with new age players for our services, our components, and solutions. So on some areas we've already entered. We are in dialogue and discussion, both on EV for both two-wheelers and four-wheelers. And we are also in discussion on matter hydrogen. Yeah. And hydrogen we see will come for the heavy commercial area with hydrogen ICE initially, later hydrogen FCEV. So Bosch will play a very significant and a good and strong role in the EV market. Last comment. We talk about EV today. EV is still at 1.5 to 2% of the market. It will grow. Our estimate by 2030, at the most positive case, I would say, EV could be around 30% of the total. So summary, while ICE will still remain dominant, EV will grow. Bosch worldwide, but also India will play a significant role as we have done for our other areas in our core and revived core. And this is our Spark.next, or on our transitioning and transformation of retaining the past while going forward to the future.
You got me from the word hello on the new campus. I would love to visit the campus and perhaps understand the dynamics one of the days. But just a follow-up question. When a company is in a transition process, there is an investment which they will have to do. The old business will start reducing and the new business will start coming in. That's the transition, and that I think would be a 2-3 year transition. So while you're talking about your peak revenue to go higher, could it come at the cost of higher R&D? Could it come at a cost of lower margin first and higher margin later?
Again, I would say it's a very good and provocative question. So I will answer both the provocative part and the good part of it. So let me tell you, by design, even during times when people were not spending money, we have spent about 800 crores on this campus. And please do visit us. 75 acres in the heart of the city, where the average age of Bosch Limited is now down about 8 years ago from 45 down to 37 and decreasing. For our software company, the average age of 28. We are talking of a gen which will work in a different way. In the 75 acres, in the Bosch ethics, we are going to get just 10 to 12,000 colleagues in. We could have got 1 lakh in. And we're creating this to create the atmosphere for us to do the Spark.next. Whether it is electrification, whether it is hydrogen, whether it is automation of driving, whether it is connectivity, whether it is software, whether it is sensors. So my point is Bosch is 15 companies in India. We talk about the limited company, which is a flagship. But don't forget, we work together with all our sister companies. We have the biggest R&D center as Bosch India worldwide outside Germany, including the number of colleagues working for R&D. In India, Bosch Limited spends about 6% of its turnover on R&D. Our parent spends between 8 and 10% of its global turnover, more than 80 billion euro on R&D. So we are there for the long haul, not for quarter to quarter. When you ask the last part, provocative, and rightly so, what does it mean for margins? Look, we are going to continue to focus on our core. You never let go your core. We are going to rewire our core. That's very, very important. And we are transitioning and transforming based on a very strong weightage from our parent who has been there, seen it, and done that, whether it's on EV, on hydrogen, on connectivity, on sensors, or on software. And we are going to use that power, including the Indian power, to work very closely with the industry to transform. In the new business, you have to be a little patient. So Bosch is not a company which looks again at quarters. We will be working closely with our partners to not just improve the market, but where necessary, even co-create the market, but in a partnership manner, the way we have always done. We will not be doing it alone. And our partnership will be with OEMs, with new age players, with everyone.
Okay, just to wrap it up with one quick question, I'll not extend my appointment beyond that. When you migrate to new technologies and this partnership is going to be done with your parent, what would be the royalty arrangement? I mean, would you be doing any different royalty arrangements because this is new technology? I'm sure the parent has already invested. The Indian counterpart will have to pay perhaps more for royalty. Your smile is telling me that this is a question which you were prepared for, or maybe you would like to answer.
Look, you have to just look at our past data for the last 10 years. And Bosch is a very quiet company. We have been far below the median. So I'm not going to give numbers, but we have been far below the median of all the companies in terms of either technology or royalty payment. We want to remain equal to or below the median. And we do this in a very quiet way on the principle of governance, as well as on the principle of related party, and most importantly, on what is a win-win. So we have always seen as a listed company that we protect the minority shareholders' interest, and while we work very closely with the promoter. So we will continue doing that. And just the indication to tell you, the last 10 years, we were far below the median, and that we will continue to create a win-win for both tells you the story completely.
So nice to hear that. And you've given us a lot to really mull over in terms of the direction, policy, and also more important, the clarification on royalty. I hope you'll appreciate the spirit of my question, because that is something which more than often has been a contentious issue for some of the market participants.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the fantastic questions and the insightful points that you brought up.